The tide is truly turning as reporters are now finally unafraid to share what they really think of Blake Lively. Also a new legal filing that has me here defending.
And she said to me, did you even see Age of Adeline? It doesn't just take place in the 30s, it takes place over 3 decades. And then she stomped away. And I was like,
Are you kidding?
I did see Age of Adeline. I actually like that.
The walls are closing in on Blake Lively as reporters finally break their silence about her shocking behavior behind the scenes. But that's not even the most disturbing part of the story. New legal filings reveal tactics so extreme that even veteran entertainment journalists are calling them unethical.
So I was surprised to see Page 6 Radio featuring 3 of their hosts and our senior reporter, Mara Siegler, sharing feelings about Blake. Honest feelings about Blake. I want to hear
Team
this.
Justin, but I'm firmly not Team Blake Lively. I'm anti-Lively.
Okay, yeah. Anti-Lively.
And I'm neutral on him, I guess.
Gotcha.
I'm definitely not.
I feel like a lot of people feel the same way that you feel in this situation. How the same, but I want to hear your experience.
Could this desperate legal strategy actually backfire in court? And why are Blake's own lawyers now targeting children in their documents? The answers reveal a celebrity meltdown that's spiraling completely out of control. Page 6 reporters just shattered years of silence with explosive revelations about Blake Lively's treatment of entertainment media. These aren't anonymous sources or unverified claims. These are established journalists going on record with their personal experiences, finally breaking the code of silence that has protected Blake for years.
She's like afraid. They're all afraid, but here she is. Okay, I guess I gotta tell SiriusXM Page 6 Radio. You're Page 6 yourself.
It was when she did Cafe Society with Woody Allen.
The first bombshell comes from Page 6 senior reporter Mara Siegler, who describes an emotional event that turned into a humiliating public confrontation. Picture this scenario. A simple interview setup for Blake's film, Cafe Society. The question was pre-approved by Blake's own representatives, completely standard industry practice, asking about her connection to the 1930s time period feature.
We had a television show at the time, Page 6 TV. I was there with a camera. I had talked to her rep before. I really just needed her to answer like one thing on, that's all they wanted. I had been told what questions to ask her. Normally we wouldn't do that, but again, this is for our television. We just needed her to answer.
Instead of providing a basic emotional answer that would help market her movie, Blake launched into a condescending verbal attack. She questioned whether the reporter had even watched The Age of Adeline, dismissing the question as obvious. Her exact words were brutal. Did you even see The Age of Adeline? It doesn't just take place in the 30s. It takes place over 3 decades. But here's the crucial detail that makes this story so damaging. The reporter had seen the movie. She was actually a fan who had watched it twice. This wasn't ignorance. It was Blake choosing hostility over basic professional courtesy, even toward journalists who genuinely supported her work.
It's just on Age of Adeline. Why do you love, what do you love about the decade of the 30s? Because Cafe Society happens in, it was like the 20s or 30s. Her records are over. I asked her this
A question you would never care about Blake Lively's answer also. Hey, Blake!
What do you like about the 1930s Blake Lively? Like, who cares? Just tell me anything
The reporter's
nice.
shock was palpable and storytelling. This was supposed to be easy promotional content, the kind of softball interview designed to generate positive buzz. Instead, Blake turned it into a public humiliation.
She said to me, it doesn't just take place in the 30s, it takes place over 3 decades. And then she stomped away. And I was sort of like,
are you kidding?
I did see Age of Adeline. I actually like that movie. I watched it twice.
Stomping away after her verbal assault, as if the reporter had committed some unforgivable offense. But the pattern of contempt runs much deeper. Another Page 6 journalist reveals how Blake completely abandoned a scheduled press line for the film Savages.
At the time. And I just found that to be very, like, listen, I'm doing a job, you're doing a job, it's your job to be on the red carpet.
Wow, that's so funny. I had this.
An entire room of reporters waiting. These weren't paparazzi or tabloid writers. These were legitimate entertainment journalists who had arranged their schedules and allocated resources to provide promotional coverage.
There's no way that we all came down here and Blake Lively didn't do the carpet. Oh, savages. And we turned into savages. We were like, get Blake out here. So her rep, I've had great experience with her rep.
Me too. I love the rep. I just want to say that. I do love her.
Yes.
I hope she's not mad at me.
Leslie Sloan. We're talking about
Right.
Leslie Sloan.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of Leslie Sloan. I honestly am.
The situation became so absurd that the press pool collectively revolted, demanding Blake to think about how unprecedented this is. Professional journalists don't typically stage confrontations with celebrities. For them to unite in protest suggests Blake's behavior crossed every line of professional conduct. When Blake finally dared to appear, the restrictions imposed were deliberately insulting. Reporters could ask only one full question, meaning no individual interviews, no follow-ups, no meaningful interaction.
I was like, all right, guys, like we'll bring her back to me.
Look how annoyed Leslie. All right, fine. We'll do you. We'll make sure we give you what you came for, even though you all came out in your night. Fine, we'll give
Brought
you.
her back, and then she was like, but you get one question and it has to be pooled. Pooled means that you get to do the interview with others. It's not exclusive. So we all had to think of one question, and then everyone looked at me. And at the time, I was working for
Anyway, blah blah blah.
I just eat cupcakes all day. Sort of okay. And so
So the question was, how do you stay in shape?
asked her, and she was like, I just eat cupcakes all day. And then that was it. And it actually did get a lot of pickup. And at the time, I thought like, oh my god, that's so funny. She's so quirky. She just eats cupcakes all day. Like, I'm the one who got to ask the question. We had a moment. But then when all of the interviews resurfaced where she was rude to report, where she was not so nice to reporters, I was like looking at her and I was like, is that just condescending? Is she dismissing me?
You know what? I feel she was actually Tamara.
The entire press pool had to collaborate on a single query, reducing experienced journalists to the level of amateur bloggers begging for strikes. The question they settled on reveals their desperation. How do you stay in shape? This is exactly the kind of vapid content that serious entertainment reporters typically avoid. But Blake's hostility had reduced them to asking for basic promotional material just to salvage something from their wasted time. Blake's response was equally telling. Her dismissive answer about eating cupcakes all day seemed quirky and relatable at the time, generating the kind of lighthearted coverage that publicists dream about. But viewed through the lens of her documented contempt for media professionals, the response takes on a more sinister tone. Was she mocking the question itself? Dismissing the reporter who asked it? The journalist now suspects the answer and relatable at the time, designed to make him feel foolish for asking such a trivial question while simultaneously providing the meaningless soundbite that promotional requirements demanded. What makes these revelations particularly explosive is their source. Page 6 isn't a scandal sheet or gossip blog. It's an established entertainment outlet with professional relationships throughout Hollywood. Their reporters work closely with celebrity publicists like Leslie Sloan, Blake's own representative, maintaining the delicate balance between critical coverage and industry access. For Page 6 journalists to publicly criticize Blake suggests her behavior was so consistently problematic that it overwhelmed professional courtesy considerations. These reporters risk damaging
Their reporters
relationships
work closely with celebrity
publicists
publicists like Leslie
major
Sloan,
celebrities.
Blake's
Yet
own
they chose to
representative,
speak out anyway.
maintaining the delicate
timing
balance
is
between
equally
critical
significant.
coverage
These
and
stories
industry
have been buried
access.
for
For
years,
Page 6
with
journalists to
reporters
publicly
keeping their
criticize
negative
Blake
experiences
suggests her
private to
behavior
maintain
was so
professional
consistently
relationships.
problematic
The
that
fact
it
that they're now
overwhelmed
speaking
professional
publicly
courtesy
suggests a
considerations. These
fundamental
reporters
shift
throughout
in how
Hollywood.
information
Their
is
reporters work
viewed.
closely with
Powerful
celebrities.
behavior. Why risk burning bridges with powerful Hollywood publicists now? The answer points to a pattern of behavior so consistent and egregious that staying silent became ethically impossible. When multiple journalists from the same professional outlet independently confirm similar experiences, it suggests systematic problems rather than isolated incidents. The current legal battle stems from Blake Lively's allegations against her. It ends with us, director and co-star Justin Baldoni.
She claims workplace harassment and a coordinated smear campaign designed to damage her reputation. Blake's legal team filed complaints alleging that Baldoni's representatives orchestrated negative media coverage through strategic leaks and manufactured controversies. The case initially appeared to focus on professional misconduct and potential contract violations.
Offers
However,
a perfect
the story
example
took
of
a
how
dramatic
public
turn
perception
when
can
evidence emerged suggesting Blake's own team may have engaged in similar media manipulation tactics. Text messages and communications revealed discussions about managing public perception and controlling narrative flow. This revelation transformed the case from a straightforward harassment complaint into a complex battle over media strategy and public relations warfare. Both sides now stand accused of attempting to manipulate press coverage for strategic advantage. The involvement of high-profile entertainment journalists like Perez Hilton further complicated the situation. Blake's team suggested that negative coverage might be financially motivated, implying that opposing counsel was paying for favorable stories. These accusations created a dangerous precedent, essentially arguing that any critical entertainment reporting could be dismissed as purchased content rather than legitimate journalism. The legal implications of this case extend far beyond celebrity drama. Blake's team is essentially arguing that entertainment journalism critical of their client represents coordinated harassment rather than protected speech. In simple terms, this approach could criminalize standard entertainment reporting. If successful, it would create a legal framework allowing celebrities to sue journalists and media outlets for negative coverage by claiming it represents organized harassment campaigns. This strategy appears legally questionable for several reasons. First, entertainment journalism has established First Amendment protections, particularly when reporting on public figures. Courts generally require proof of actual malice or deliberate falsehoods for successful defamation claims against celebrities. Second, the evidence supporting coordination claims seems circumstantial at best. Blake's team points to timing and messaging similarities as proof of conspiracy, but these patterns could easily reflect standard news cycle dynamics rather than deliberate coordination. The inclusion of children's photos in legal documents represents perhaps the most problematic tactical decision. Legal experts note that such inclusions serve no legitimate purpose in harassment or defamation cases. The tactic appears designed to intimidate rather than support legal arguments. This approach could backfire spectacularly in court. Judges typically view attempts to drag family members into celebrity disputes unfavorably, particularly when minor children are involved without clear relevance to the case. This strategy also risks triggering sanctions for frivolous litigation tactics. Courts have broad authority to penalize attorneys who file documents containing irrelevant personal information clearly intended to harass opposing parties. This case could fundamentally reshape how celebrity legal teams approach media relations disputes. If Blake's aggressive tactics succeed, expect similar lawsuits targeting entertainment journalists who publish critical coverage of high-profile figures. The implications extend beyond celebrity culture into broader press freedom concerns. Entertainment journalism, while often dismissed as gossip, serves important functions in holding powerful figures accountable for their professional conduct. Consider the pattern emerging here. Multiple journalists from different outlets sharing similar experiences with Blake's dismissive behavior. These aren't coordinated attacks. They're independent confirmations of problematic conduct patterns. The timing of these revelations is particularly significant. Reporters who previously remained silent are now speaking publicly, suggesting a shift in the entertainment journalism landscape. The traditional power dynamic between celebrities and media appears to be rebalancing. Page 6's decision to allow their reporters to share these stories represents a major shift in entertainment journalism standards. The outlet has historically protected celebrity relationships, making these public criticisms particularly noteworthy. This trend could encourage more journalists to share their experiences with difficult celebrities, potentially exposing systematic problems in how some high-profile figures treat media professionals. The legal precedent could also impact how harassment claims are evaluated in entertainment industry contexts. Courts may need to distinguish between legitimate workplace complaints and attempts to weaponize legal systems against critical media coverage. The most disturbing aspect of this case isn't the celebrity drama. It's the attempt to silence legitimate journalism through legal intimidation. Blake's team isn't just defending their client. They're attacking the fundamental principle that public figures remain subject to media scrutiny. The inclusion of family photos in legal documents crosses ethical lines that should concern everyone, regardless of their opinion about Blake Lively or Justin Baldoni. Using children as leverage in celebrity disputes represents a dangerous escalation in legal warfare tactics. What's particularly revealing is how Blake's own private communications contradict her public legal strategy. Internal texts show her team dismissing Perez Hilton as irrelevant and attention-seeking, yet they simultaneously argue he's influential enough to damage her reputation through coordinated attacks. This contradiction undermines their entire legal theory. Why would anyone pay someone they privately consider irrelevant and ineffective? The logical inconsistency suggests these harassment claims may be more strategic than substantive. The broader entertainment industry is watching this case carefully. If aggressive legal tactics succeed in silencing critical coverage, expect similar strategies to proliferate throughout Hollywood. Celebrity legal teams may conclude that intimidation works better than professional media relations. Conversely, if courts reject these tactics, it could strengthen protections for entertainment journalism and establish important precedents about the limits of celebrity legal privilege. The tide is turning in this high-stakes legal battle, but the outcome remains uncertain. What's clear is that Blake Lively's attempt to control media narrative through aggressive litigation has backfired spectacularly, encouraging more journalists to share their negative experiences publicly. The case now represents something larger than celebrity drama. It's become a test of whether powerful figures can weaponize legal systems to silence critical media coverage. The implications will extend far beyond entertainment journalism into broader questions about press freedom and accountability. And if this case moves forward with its current aggressive tactics, it could expose everything about how some celebrities really treat the media professionals who help build their careers. What do you think about these new revelations? Are Blake's legal tactics justified, or has this gone too far? Drop your take in the comments below, and let us know if you've had similar experiences with celebrity interviews that seemed unnecessarily hostile.
Claims and they are panicking. Okay, so you know how Justin Baldoni filed that $400 million countersuit that has now since been dismissed? Well, overnight, Blake Lively filed a motion to compel, saying that they never fully turned over all of those documents from their countersuit that they referenced and cited and annotated and all the jazz, right? And now she wants them.
Blake Lively just made a move that has legal experts scratching their heads. After Justin Baldoni's $400 million countersuit was dismissed, most people would assume the case was over, but not Blake Lively. She is now demanding discovery from that very same dismissed case, claiming she needs to see everything Baldoni's team had planned to use against her.
They're asking for the court to remove privilege on a group text between Brian Friedman and some of the defendants. And her argument is the same that she has been kind of arguing up until this point, that he wasn't actually being a lawyer. He was being their PR person. And this is where I think things get a little brave, as they go, just because Nathan and Abel were on the group text with Brian Friedman, they're saying that this served as Wayfair's defendant media strategy and destroyed any claim of attorney-client privilege.
Could this aggressive legal strategy actually backfire? Or is this a calculated move that reveals just how desperate things have become? What we are seeing unfold right now could change everything we thought we knew about this Hollywood legal battle. Here is what happened overnight. Essentially telling the court that even though Baldoni's countersuit was dismissed, she still wants access to all the documents, communications, and evidence his legal team had gathered. This is not your typical post-dismissal request. In fact, legal experts are calling it one of the most aggressive discovery moves they have seen in a celebrity case.
I cackled a little bit at this one. He didn't give the video of his wife giving birth. Like, he hasn't turned that over yet.
The motion specifically targets several explosive areas, and each one reveals a different aspect of Lively's legal strategy. First, and perhaps most damaging, Lively is demanding access to group text messages between Brian Friedman, who served as Baldoni's attorney, and other defendants in the case. Her argument is stunning in its boldness. She claims Friedman was not actually functioning as a lawyer, but as a public relations strategist, which would strip away attorney-client privilege protections.
It honestly looks like she doesn't have what she needs, and I don't know. They're going back to a dismissed case that they're probably going to have a very hard time fighting to get. I don't know, maybe not. I need that's why I've been waiting all morning for somebody smarter than me to go over this, but nobody else is coming in. So I'm going to ask my questions, and my questions are, are they allowed to go and actually go back and say, I know your case is dismissed, but we need all the discovery from that?
Like, I don't think that's, but then I don't know because all of those cases are so intermixed.
But here's where it gets legally fascinating. The group texts allegedly included Nathan Kahane and Jamie Heath, who were not just random participants. They were actively involved in the litigation as defendants, while simultaneously working on media strategy. Lively's team argues that this dual role destroyed any claim to attorney-client privilege. In simple terms, when you mix legal advice with PR strategy in the same conversation, you might lose the legal protections that normally keep those communications private.
The judge needed the whole transcript for the small portion they were quoting. No.
So now we've got Attorney McCaffrey discussing Blake trying to get the transcript of the deposition removed. They included it as an exhibit, even though it was, sealed or whatever. They included it as an exhibit to reference something they were mentioning. But again, it's very normal for that to happen.
Think about the implications here. If a judge agrees that Friedman was doing PR work instead of legal work, those private communications become fair game. Every strategy session, every discussion about how to handle Blake Lively, every piece of advice given about managing the media narrative could potentially be exposed. We could see internal discussions about how to discredit Lively, how to shape public opinion, and how to coordinate their legal and media responses. So,
Do I and other lawyers I routinely am against just file the whole deposition transcript if I'm using it as an exhibit in a motion? Yes. I think I referenced that motion for summary judgment that I was working on.
The legal precedent this could set is enormous. If successful, Lively's argument could fundamentally change how attorneys handle high-profile cases. Law firms might need to completely separate their legal teams from their PR consultants to avoid losing privilege protections. But the most bizarre demand in the entire motion involves a water birth video featuring Justin Baldoni's wife. Yes, you heard that correctly. This is the same video that Lively previously complained about being shown during the production process, claiming it made her uncomfortable and was inappropriate workplace behavior. Now she wants to examine it herself, claiming it could help jog her memory about events that occurred on set.
Lil girl attorney offering her opinion that Blake Lively has dirty tactics that she's using to come after Justin Baldoni's attorney.
Abe is trying to do is make Brian Friedman into a fact witness in this case. If he is a fact witness in this case, then discovery is relevant to support Lively's claims.
Contradiction here is striking. Lively's original complaint suggested that being shown this video was part of the hostile work environment she experienced. Now she is actively seeking access to the same material. Critics are pointing out that Baldoni had posted portions of this birth experience on his own social media, making it hardly the private, invasive content that Lively's team originally portrayed it as. Legal experts are divided on this particular demand. Some see it as Lively's team being thorough in their discovery requests. Others view it as an attempt to embarrass Baldoni by forcing him to turn over personal family moments, even those he had previously shared publicly.
So the judge will have to weigh whether or not Friedman being a potential fact witness in this case outweighs the potential risk of producing work product or privileged information.
The timing of these demands is also strategically significant. By waiting until after Baldoni dismissed his countersuit, Lively's team avoided the normal reciprocal discovery process. Under typical circumstances, if she demanded this level of access to his materials, his team could have demanded equal access to her communications and documents. But with his case dismissed, the discovery flow becomes one-directional. There is another layer to consider here. Lively's motion also demands access to sealed deposition transcripts that Baldoni's team had referenced in their now-dismissed case. She argues that because they cited these transcripts in their legal filings, they waived any confidentiality protections. This is a legal argument that could have implications far beyond this case. The legal community is split on whether this strategy will work. Some experts are calling it a desperate fishing expedition, suggesting that Lively's team does not have the evidence they need for their original case and are hoping to find it in Baldoni's materials. Others believe Lively's team has identified genuine weaknesses in how Baldoni's side handled privileged communications and are exploiting those vulnerabilities brilliantly. The most telling aspect might be what it reveals about the confidence level of both legal teams. If Lively's case was as strong as initially presented, would her team need to take such aggressive steps to obtain additional evidence? Conversely, if Baldoni's team had nothing to hide, why dismiss the countersuit rather than proceed to discovery, where both sides would have equal access to each other's materials? Why would Blake Lively risk appearing overly aggressive with these demands? The answer might reveal just how much pressure her legal team is feeling right now. These are not the moves of a legal team that feels confident about their existing evidence. These are the moves of attorneys who believe they need additional ammunition to win their case. Let us rewind for a moment to understand how we got to this unprecedented situation. The entire legal battle stems from Blake Lively's initial complaint against Justin Baldoni, where she accused him of sexual harassment and creating a hostile work environment during the filming of It Ends With Us. Baldoni responded with that massive $400 million countersuit, claiming Lively had destroyed his reputation and career prospects through false allegations. That countersuit painted a picture of Lively as the real problem on set, someone who made unreasonable demands and created the very hostile environment she later complained about. But here is where things took an unexpected turn. Baldoni's legal team made what many now see as a critical error. They dismissed their own countersuit, likely believing it would strengthen their position in the original case. Instead, it opened the door for exactly what we are seeing now. The dismissal was supposed to simplify the legal landscape. Instead, it has created this unusual situation where Lively can argue she needs access to materials from a case that technically no longer exists. It is a legal gray area that could set important precedents for how dismissed cases are handled in the future. From a legal standpoint, what Blake Lively is attempting here walks a very fine line. In simple terms, she is arguing that even though Baldoni dismissed his case, the discovery materials he gathered are still relevant to her ongoing claims. This is not typically how the legal system works. When a case is dismissed, the general expectation is that associated discovery materials remain with the parties who gathered them. But Lively's team is making a creative argument. They claim that because all these cases are interconnected, and because some of the materials might contain evidence of attorney-client privilege violations, the normal rules should not apply. The privilege issue is particularly complex. Attorney-client privilege is one of the strongest protections in the legal system, but it can be waived if the attorney steps outside their role as legal counsel. If Brian Friedman was indeed coordinating public relations strategy while also providing legal advice, it could create what lawyers call a waiver of privilege. The inclusion of PR professionals in group communications with the attorney adds another layer of complexity. In simple terms, when lawyers include non-lawyers in confidential communications, it can destroy the privilege that would normally protect those conversations. This could be a brilliant legal strategy or a costly mistake. If the judge agrees with Lively's arguments, it could expose Baldoni's entire litigation strategy. If the judge rejects them, it could make Lively appear desperate and overreaching. The broader legal community is watching this case closely because it could establish new precedents for how mixed legal and PR strategies are handled in high-profile cases. This case is revealing something important about how celebrity legal battles are fought in the social media age. The line between legal strategy and public relations has become increasingly blurred, and courts are struggling to keep up with these new realities. If Blake Lively succeeds in her discovery demands, it could fundamentally change how attorneys approach high-profile cases. Law firms might need to completely separate their legal and PR functions to avoid privilege issues. The cost and complexity of celebrity litigation could increase dramatically. But there is another possibility that nobody is talking about openly. What if this entire discovery battle is actually a negotiation tactic? By making these aggressive demands, Lively's team might be trying to pressure Baldoni into a settlement. After all, the threat of having privileged communications exposed could be more powerful than actually exposing them. The timing is also suspicious. Why make these demands now, after the countersuit has been dismissed? It suggests that Lively's team might not be as confident in their case as they initially appeared. They might be looking for additional ammunition or trying to find evidence that could shift public opinion back in their favor. There is also the question of what this reveals about how the entertainment industry really works. The casual mention of sweet-talking actors to ensure cooperation, the blending of legal and PR strategies, the assumption that everyone in Hollywood operates with hidden agendas, It paints a picture of an industry where authentic relationships are rare. For Justin Baldoni, this discovery battle represents a new front in what was supposed to be a concluded legal matter. His team now has to decide whether to fight these demands aggressively or try to minimize the damage through partial compliance. The judge in this case essentially holds the power to reshape how celebrity legal battles are conducted going forward. Will the court prioritize traditional legal protections like attorney-client privilege, or will it adapt to the new reality where legal and PR strategies are inseparable? What we are witnessing here goes beyond just another Hollywood legal battle. This case is testing the limits of our legal system when it collides with modern celebrity culture and social media dynamics. The most fascinating aspect is how both sides seem to be playing for different audiences. Blake Lively appears to be fighting for legal vindication and public support. Justin Baldoni seems to be fighting for professional survival and reputation recovery. Neither side can win completely without destroying the other. The discovery demands reveal something crucial about litigation strategy in the digital age. When every communication might become public, when every legal filing gets analyzed by content creators and legal experts online, traditional litigation tactics have to evolve. If you are following this case, pay attention to how the judge rules on these discovery demands. It will tell us whether courts are ready to adapt to these new realities or whether they will stick to traditional approaches that might not fit modern celebrity disputes. The broader question is whether our legal system can handle cases where the line between law, public relations, and entertainment has completely disappeared. This case might be the test case that determines how we handle celebrity legal battles for years to come. And here's the question that should keep everyone interested in this case awake at night. If Blake Lively gets access to these materials and they do not contain the smoking gun evidence she needs, what happens next? Does this case spiral into an even more destructive legal battle, or does it finally force both sides to find a resolution? The stakes could not be higher for both Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. Their careers, their reputations, and potentially their financial futures hang in the balance. The legal system is about to decide not just the outcome of their dispute, but how similar disputes will be handled in our increasingly connected and transparent world. What do you think about Blake Lively's aggressive discovery demands? Is this a smart legal strategy or a sign of desperation? And do you believe the traditional protections like attorney-client privilege should apply when lawyers are also coordinating public relations campaigns? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, because this case is far from over, and your perspective.
Courtroom chaos? The judges blocked the subpoenas of Justin Baldoni's lawyer as Blake Lively files for sanctions. We got Ron Zambrano here to explain it all.
Courtroom chaos erupts as a federal judge delivers a stunning ruling that could reshape the entire Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni legal war. In a dramatic turn of events, the court has blocked Blake Lively's aggressive subpoena attempts targeting Baldoni's legal team, but that's just the beginning of this explosive story.
The judge has now blocked Blake Lively's subpoenas of Justin Baldoni's legal team. I mean, this was expected. It's not pretty typical to be able to get stuff from the lawyer and his clients that's privilege.
Because while Lively celebrates what appears to be a partial victory, she's simultaneously launching a nuclear option, filing for sanctions against Baldoni's high-profile attorney, Brian Friedman. The question everyone's asking tonight, could this backfire spectacularly and land her legal team in hot water instead? What you're about to discover will shock you.
Beyond that, specific communications will not be handed over, correct? Was this the right verdict? And can you sort of explain to the audience what this all means?
Yeah, so the judge took a very tempered view and I think specific view as to what each individual request is asking for, splitting them into three categories. So
strategic missteps, leaked transcripts, and courtroom blunders that could determine whether justice prevails or if Hollywood's power players can manipulate the system. Was this all a carefully calculated setup, or is someone about to learn a very expensive lesson about crossing the line in federal court? The bombshell ruling from Judge Lewis Lyman has sent shockwaves through both legal camps, but the devil is in the details, and those details reveal a far more complex picture than either side wants you to see.
The judge is taking the attorney's word for it, Liner's word for it, like there are no responsive documents, and the judge goes, okay, until you tell me they're lying, I have to take their word for it, let's move on. I think that's very, very, astute way of doing it.
Here's what actually happened. Blake Lively's legal team launched an unprecedented attack on the heart of attorney-client privilege itself. They didn't just want documents. They wanted to crack open the entire strategic playbook of Justin Baldoni's defense team. Their subpoenas targeted Brian Friedman's law firm demanding access to privileged attorney-client communications, internal strategy documents, correspondence with content creators, and essentially any communication that could reveal how Baldoni's team has been defending this case.
But then regarding specific communications and the other sort of requests for productions, that's where he said no.
Yeah, so in the other two, he said no. And again, he took a very, very specific category by category analysis. So for the second one, had to do with documents between like
communications and concerning content and more media generally.
This wasn't a fishing expedition. This was dynamite fishing. Lively's attorneys were asking the court to blow up one of the most fundamental protections in the legal system, the sacred bond between lawyer and client. Judge Lyman saw exactly what was happening and responded with surgical precision that reveals just how experienced he is with these high-stakes celebrity battles. Instead of issuing a blanket ruling, he dissected Lively's subpoena requests like a master surgeon, dividing them into 3 distinct categories, each with different legal implications and strategic consequences.
As if you have more to tell me, listen, we've tried everything under the sun to get this another way and it's not working, we need to come back, then if the judge is satisfied with those efforts that don't bring to fruition, then he will reconsider this, which I thought was very, very interesting.
The first category involved general documents related to content creators that Friedman's firm represents outside of this specific lawsuit. Here's where things get fascinating. In open court, Friedman's team made what could be seen as either a brilliant strategic move or a devastating tactical error. They stated unequivocally that no documents exist regarding the specific content creators that Lively is concerned about. Think about the implications of this admission. Either Friedman's team is telling the absolute truth, and there really is no coordinated campaign with content creators, or they're playing an incredibly dangerous game by making false statements to a federal judge. There's no middle ground here.
So is it not okay for Friedman's team to be out there speaking to press or creators to say, here's our official statement, or here's the evidence that dropped that's part of our legal documents? Where is the line as to what's allowed and what's retaliation in your mind?
That's a great point. So under the litigation privilege that exists in every state, California, New York, things that anybody say connected to what's called a pending judicial proceeding like this is privileged under the litigation privilege from suing, because that would be a suppression of our ability to bring grievances to the court.
Judge Lyman essentially responded, if these documents don't exist, then no harm, no foul. He granted protection for unrelated content creator relationships while simultaneously denying the request for documents that supposedly don't exist anyway. It was a masterclass in judicial efficiency that managed to protect legitimate attorney-client relationships while calling everyone's bluff. But here's where the ruling gets truly explosive, and where Brian Friedman might have made his first major strategic miscalculation. For the second and third categories of requests, which involved specific communications between Friedman and media outlets, plus any documents related to media strategy and public relations campaigns, Judge Lyman delivered a resounding and unequivocal no.
Clear, like he's allowed to speak to the press about the case. That's because that's what's weirdly being, I feel like, spun in the narrative of Blake, is that any communication Wayfair parties, anybody, whatever them had with press sort of defending themselves with statements is somehow part of the retaliation campaign or ongoing smear campaign. And you're legal. That's not the case. They're allowed to defend themselves.
Yeah, they're allowed to defend themselves. They're allowed to make statements about defending themselves. That's absolutely above board. That's 100% above water.
The judge didn't just cite attorney-client privilege. He went further, noting that these requests were overly burdensome and potentially violated established legal protections. But here's the part that should terrify Lively's legal team. He specifically mentioned that there seemed to be a disconnect between their original complaint and these new discovery demands. In judicial language, that's basically the judge saying, "You're changing your story, and I've noticed." However, and this is the detail that changes everything, Judge Lyman used the phrase "without prejudice." This isn't just legal terminology, it's a strategic roadmap. What the judge is essentially telling Lively's team is, I'm not shutting this door forever, but you're going about this completely wrong.
So is there a part of this where they've gone too far? Could these sanctions be actually, given?
So it depends what the judge is going to cling on to, is what is the conduct that's violating what we call violative conduct that empowers the judge to sanction anybody, right?
The judge made it crystal clear. If you want this information, find a less intrusive way to get it. Talk to the content creators directly. Subpoena them instead of going after the attorney. Use traditional discovery methods before you try to blow up attorney-client privilege. This ruling reveals something absolutely fascinating about judicial thinking in the digital age. Courts want to protect attorney-client privilege while still allowing legitimate discovery, but they're not going to let parties use modern media warfare as an excuse to destroy fundamental legal protections. The judge is essentially saying, just because this case involves social media and content creators doesn't mean we're throwing out centuries of legal precedent. But was this really a win for Baldoni's team? The answer is far more complicated than either side wants to admit. Yes, they avoided the immediate threat of having their privileged communications exposed. But they also made several admissions under oath that could come back to haunt them. Meanwhile, Blake Lively's team learned something crucial about Judge Lyman's approach to this case. He's not going to be bullied or manipulated by celebrity status or media pressure. He's going to follow established legal procedures and precedents, regardless of how famous the parties involved might be. The real question becomes, why did Lively's team choose this approach in the first place? Did they genuinely believe they could convince a federal judge to ignore attorney-client privilege? Or was this entire subpoena strategy designed to fail publicly and create ammunition for their sanctions motion? Because while Baldoni's team celebrated avoiding the subpoenas, Brian Friedman's conduct outside the courtroom was about to become the center of an even bigger controversy. Let's rewind for a second and understand how we got to this explosive moment. This legal battle began when Blake Lively filed a complaint with the California Civil Rights Department, alleging sexual harassment and a coordinated smear campaign against her during and after the filming of It Ends With Us. That complaint contained detailed evidence and personal communications, material that statements must be connected to the legal proceeding and serve a legitimate purpose in the litigation. Brian Friedman's media appearances defending Baldoni likely fall within acceptable bounds. Attorneys have the right to make public statements about their cases and defend their clients' reputations. The key question is whether any private communications between Friedman and content creators crossed ethical lines. Blake Lively's team is essentially arguing that Friedman orchestrated a coordinated campaign using content creators to amplify negative narratives about her. They want to prove there was a secret strategy involving specific talking points and coordinated messaging. In simple terms, this means they're trying to show the difference between legitimate defense and orchestrated retaliation. If they can prove Friedman was telling content creators exactly what to say and when to say it, that could constitute improper conduct. But here's the strategic problem for Lively's team. They chose the most difficult path to prove their case. Instead of directly subpoenaing content creators, who don't have attorney-client privilege protection, they went after the lawyer first. The judge essentially told them, "You're doing this backwards." This tactical error suggests either overconfidence or a fundamental misunderstanding of legal privilege protections. It's a mistake that could cost them credibility with the court. When filing documents with the court, Friedman's team attached an entire deposition transcript instead of just the relevant excerpts they needed to support their argument. Legal experts are calling this a massive blunder that violates standard litigation practices. Here's why this matters. Deposition transcripts contain sensitive information, personal details, and strategic insights that should remain confidential until properly redacted and presented. By filing the entire transcript, Friedman potentially exposed privileged information and gave the public access to far more details than necessary. Blake Lively's team immediately pounced on this mistake, using it as the foundation for their sanctions motion. They're arguing that Friedman deliberately leaked sensitive information to influence public opinion and potential jurors. But there's a deeper issue here that reveals the high-stakes nature of this case. The transcript allegedly contains information about who was present during depositions, what was discussed, and strategic details about both sides' cases. This information is now part of the public record, even if redacted. The sanctions motion paints a picture of an attorney who has repeatedly pushed ethical boundaries. Lively's team points to previous incidents, including a letter that was struck from the record for containing inappropriate information about Taylor Swift and other irrelevant details. They're also challenging specific quotes and statements attributed to Friedman in media interviews, claiming he made inflammatory comments designed to prejudice potential jurors. However, some of these allegations appear to be misattributed. Statements that were actually made by media personalities like Megyn Kelly are being blamed on Friedman. This pattern suggests that both sides are engaged in narrative warfare that extends far beyond the courtroom. Each side is trying to control public perception while simultaneously fighting the legal battle. The potential consequences are severe. If Judge Lyman determines that Friedman violated court rules or ethical standards, he could face monetary sanctions, restrictions on his ability to file documents, or even more serious disciplinary action. The sanctions motion represents a pivotal moment that could determine the trajectory of this entire case. But what are the realistic chances that Brian Friedman faces serious consequences? Legal experts suggest that judges typically start with modest monetary sanctions for first-time procedural violations, perhaps $4,000 to $5,000. It's designed to send a message without crippling the attorney's ability to represent their client. However, this isn't Friedman's first alleged misstep. The previous incident involving the Taylor Swift letter that was struck from the record establishes a pattern of pushing boundaries. Judges don't like patterns of problematic behavior, especially when they've already issued warnings. The critical factor will be Judge Lyman's determination about intent. Was the full transcript filing an honest mistake, or was it a deliberate attempt to leak information into the public domain? If the court believes it was intentional, the consequences could be much more severe than monetary sanctions. The judge could impose what are called evidentiary sanctions or issue sanctions, essentially preventing Friedman's team from presenting certain evidence or arguments. In extreme cases, courts can even dismiss claims or defenses entirely. But there's another layer to consider: the court of public opinion. By filing for sanctions, Blake Lively's team is essentially arguing that they're the victims of an unethical smear campaign orchestrated by opposing counsel. This narrative positions them as the party fighting fairly, while their opponents break the rules. However, this strategy carries risks. If the sanctions motion fails or appears frivolous, it could backfire and make Lively's team appear overly aggressive or vindictive. Judges don't appreciate frivolous sanctions motions, which can result in counter-sanctions against the filing party. The timing of this motion is also strategically significant. It comes immediately after the subpoena ruling, which suggests Lively's team is trying to maintain momentum and pressure after a mixed result on their discovery requests. This case raises fundamental questions about how the legal system handles celebrity disputes and whether famous plaintiffs receive different treatment than ordinary citizens. Blake Lively's initial decision to file a public civil rights department complaint, complete with detailed evidence and personal communications, was highly unusual. Most employment disputes are handled privately through confidential settlements or sealed court proceedings. By making her allegations public from the beginning, Lively essentially forced this case into the spotlight and created the media circus that now surrounds every filing and ruling. This tactical choice gave her control over the initial narrative, but also opened the door for the kind of public relations warfare we're witnessing. Justin Baldoni's response, hiring a high-profile media-savvy attorney and fighting back publicly, represents the natural evolution of celebrity legal disputes in the social media age. Both sides recognize that public perception can be as important as courtroom victories. But this approach creates new ethical challenges for the legal system. When attorneys become media personalities and court filings become public relations documents, traditional boundaries between legal advocacy and public relations work become blurred. The broader implications extend beyond this case. If Lively succeeds in establishing that aggressive public defense constitutes improper retaliation, it could create a chilling effect on how attorneys defend their clients in high-profile cases. Conversely, if Baldoni's team prevails in arguing that their public statements are protected litigation privilege, it could establish broader protections for attorneys who engage in media advocacy. The entertainment industry is watching closely because this case could set precedents for how sexual harassment allegations, defamation claims, and media strategy intersect in the legal system. As this legal drama continues to unfold, several critical developments will determine the ultimate outcome and broader implications. Judge Lyman's ruling on the sanctions motion will be the next major inflection point. If he sides with Blake Lively and imposes meaningful sanctions on Brian Friedman, it will signal that courts are willing to police attorney conduct in high-profile cases more aggressively. However, if the sanctions motion fails, it could embolden Baldoni's team to pursue even more aggressive tactics and potentially file counter-sanctions against Lively's attorneys for frivolous motions. The discovery process will ultimately determine which side has stronger evidence. Lively's team still has options for obtaining the communications they want. They can subpoena content creators directly, pursue other avenues for evidence gathering, and continue building their case through traditional litigation channels. Meanwhile, Baldoni's team will likely file their own motions challenging the underlying legal theories in Lively's case. They may argue that her retaliation claims are barred by litigation privilege and First Amendment protections. The financial stakes continue to escalate with each filing. Both sides are reportedly spending enormous sums on legal fees, suggesting that neither is prepared to back down or seek early settlement. Perhaps most significantly, this case is becoming a referendum on power dynamics in Hollywood and whether the legal system can adequately address complex disputes involving celebrity status, media manipulation, and competing narratives about sexual harassment and defamation. The outcome will likely influence how future celebrity legal disputes are handled and could establish new boundaries for attorney conduct in high-profile litigation. The Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni legal war has evolved into something far more significant than a typical